Hey, good morning, everybody. Doug Pinter on Daily Energy. Good morning, Steve. With
good morning again.
Stanley Steamer in-house.
Long time no see.
Blowing up left and right over here. We got backups, sewer problems, all sorts of things that this lovely winter weather is bringing upon Central Illinois. Buckled up, Peoria. We got more snow coming in later today, tomorrow, and over the weekend. Expected up to, I believe I heard, anywhere between 4 and 7 inches.
Depends on what weather channel you watch, I guess, because it changes every time I blink my eye and I check it, and it's something different every time I check. So
it looks like the majority of the snow will stay I-80 and north, but it's got major congestions at airports from coast to coast, and Chicago's going to be pretty much shut down later on today. A lot of flights are already being canceled.
I've got a lot of friends and family up in that area, and they said that a lot of the schools have been shut down, the school districts in Chicago, which from what I've heard is pretty rare. So
they did have that Weather Channel gentleman up in Chicago earlier today, and it looks like Chicago got quite a bit more snow.
Right.
You know, over towards Galesburg, Kewanee area, they had upwards of 10 inches earlier this week. So if you're out there traveling, be safe, be early, call the airlines, check ahead. Hey, USA falls in the Olympics last night, and the Lakers are making some moves here, make them relevant. Magic Johnson awfully happy in his interviews with SportsCenter this morning. And fly that Philly flag if you got it for my late grandfather. Congrats, Papa Ken. I know you're probably at that party, still partying with an old style from yesterday. I think it was 2 to 3 million turned out for that parade in Philadelphia. They shut down schools, and it was a major party. First
it looked like they had a blast out there
for the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. Steve, what did you think of the game? It was awfully entertaining, don't you think?
It was a very fun offensive game to watch. Defense, it was rough.
I'm sure they even had defense in this game.
No, I don't think so. I set a whole new precedents for quarterback ratios and offensive totals and
I have some of those stats and more. Nick Foles, let's talk about Nick, free agent. He came in and just all he did was win this season. I don't think he had an L on his side with Philly for the last 5-6 games of the season.
Something like that, yeah.
Maybe one. But he made himself a lot of money. Free agent. I think Philly's going to try to hang on to him.
I don't know what they're going to do. All I know is if you paid attention to what Garoppolo came through with last night, I think a $135 million deal over the course of 5 years, I think is what he got signed into.
It's not a bad deal, huh?
Yeah, considering that it's supposed to be one of the largest of that nature. What is Nick Foles going to get with being the Super Bowl MVP and that whole progression that just happened throughout the end of the year?
Yeah, I said Philly wants to keep him. Obviously, they want to keep him, but I think there's going to be too much.
Massive.
Yeah, I think there's going to be too much money on the table. Plus, with McGowan coming back, I mean, Philadelphia is going to be relevant. I do think they'll need to make some moves on the defensive side of the ball, maybe tighten up that O-line a little bit. But boy, they look pretty balanced. That Ajayi pick earlier.
Yeah, that worked out well for him, didn't it?
Yeah, picked up Ajayi halfway through the season. He became more of a role player. They got Blount from New England from last year. A little fun fact, Blount and Chris Long both played for New England last year when they won the Super Bowl. Got traded over to Philly, won the Super Bowl this year. First two players ever to win back-to-back years.
Back-to-back with separate teams.
On different teams.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about USA falls in the Olympics. I just heard on the way in, the 45 Russian athletes, they were, denied approval for the Winter Games because of some doping and drug policies over there. But what I'm talking about is Chen, the phenom. I believe he's 18 years of age, figure skater. Last night I was watching a little bit of it with my wife, and he had a 2-minute, 40-second, I don't know what you call that, show that he put on. He was the first person to land like a quadruple spin, which I can't even ice skate. I mean, I hang on to the wall and I struggle with that.
Right.
I can't figure out how these guys and ladies do all of this.
I can't walk down the sidewalk when the ice is on the sidewalk, let alone do all the fancy tricks and spins and.
Let alone no ice.
No, yeah.
Anyways, it was, and my son, he goes, I just don't get it. He'll get it next time. I said, but you don't understand, bud. He practices for 4 years for this 2 minute and 40 seconds, 7 days a week, 5 a.m. to good. Who knows how long they train?
It's their life.
Unfortunate for Chen. He was undefeated in the world this season. Coming into the Winter Olympics, they did an interview with him. What is today? Friday, so it was Wednesday night. He seemed pretty confident in his abilities, and he was just excited to get on the ice. Unfortunately, it did not go as planned. He said he wasn't staying in the moment. When he was coming up to his jumps, he was thinking ahead, and it was a great learning experience. He handled himself very well. I'm so impressed at some of these younger athletes. When I was 18, I said some really foolish things, let alone you put me on a national stage with cameras. These people are just so mature for their age. They represent their countries extremely well.
Right.
And, I think his message, maybe to the kids out there, is just keep after it. He'll be back.
Yep. So, yeah, and then, how about the Jamaican bobsled team that's coming up?
Hey, man.
The female Jamaican bobsled team.
I have not heard
No, you didn't see that? So that'll be
chat
interesting. I just think that's going to be really cool to see. I mean, what was the movie growing up? The Jamaican bobsled team. That
was awesome.
And now you have it, but it's the female Jamaican bobsled team that made it into the Olympics.
What was the name of that movie?
I can't even.
First person that texts me at 309-231-3821 get a $10 gift card to Dunkin' Donuts.
There you go.
231-3821, name of the movie with the Jamaican bobsled team.
Let's see how long it takes.
I got a couple phones rolling here. So Chen said he felt like he let the team down a little bit. Yeah, what do you do? Just wasn't his day, I don't think.
That's got to be hard. It's got to be rough. I mean, the expectations were high for him, and it didn't pan out. And to get out that early is, yeah.
But I do think holding his head high, taking the high road, being respectful and representing the country did nothing but put him in a positive light. Now they had Shaun White on, this guy. Now, I went snowboarding for the first time 2-3 weeks ago. I'm surprised I'm still alive. I never worked out so hard just trying to ski down a hill. You think it'd be a lot easier, but
I grew up, on a pair of skis. I started skiing, I think, when I was like 5 out there in Colorado, and all my friends starting in high school, they started snowboarding and they were having a great time. So I was like, I'm gonna slap on the snowboard, and it can't be that difficult. It's like it's like rolling down on a skateboard. It can't be that bad. Man, was I wrong. About halfway through the day, I said, nope, I'm switching back, jumped on my skis because,
snowboarding,
I was sore.
I need some more work on that. But Shaun White was on the Today Show this morning, CNN as well. It's amazing how this young kid with this big fro is now this younger gentleman, late 20s, I would assume.
Yeah, he's definitely a lot more distinguished and mature.
Yeah, rocking that snowboard. So
got a couple text messages.
Winter Olympics, the phone doesn't stop. Let's see. Cool running.
There it is.
Cool running. Congratulations, everybody. Not everybody, just Tim. Tim texted in. Tim, you got $10 coming in Dunkin' Donuts. Man, That's some good coffee. Yeah. Hey, while we're talking about coffee, I know this is a little hit and miss, people, but I tried to switch over to decaf this last week.
Nope.
Man, was I a grouch. So this is just full fuel right here to get me through Friday. Cheers, everybody. Happy Friday to you.
It's Friday.
We got Steve with Stanley Steamer. Had lunch with our good friend Mark Hoagland, who owns Stanley Steamer, earlier this week regarding maybe some Dunlap High School fundraising opportunities.
Really excited for that.
Talk to me. I come in earlier and you're on your phone and we're getting set here and you're like, I got to finish up a couple messages. What's going on? What's Mother Nature doing to Central Illinois?
So, I mean, the last month and a half has been super busy anyways. The cold temperatures and everything, causing pipes to bust and freeze and, mass chaos out there. And we're doing our best to keep up and help everybody out the best we can. And then this morning, we've started actually having, pipes backing up, and we're having sewage backups, and we're responding the best that we can for them and trying to get it all taken care of. But sewage plays a whole different level. It's not like we're a pipe bus or anything like that where we can extract, set up fans. When you start dealing with raw sewage, there's a lot more risk involved for the actual insured people that live in that house, because there's more risk for bacteria and viruses and other things.
And it exposes you guys to that a little bit more. So what's the protocol? You have like hazmat suits you wear in?
So we have what's called Tyvek suits. That way when we get down into that affected area, we're not tracking that. We're not going to cross-contaminate those affected areas and spread it throughout their house. We'll set up containment, put down, 6 mil plastic, which is a lot thicker plastic, different things of that nature. And then depending on, how bad the loss is and the conditions, then if we need to, we'll actually put up a containment down there as well. We've got things called a negative air scrubber, where we can set up a negative containment and keep everything being sucked into one centralized location rather than those fans blowing into other areas of the house.
Throughout the home. Man, there's nothing you guys don't do. And, if you're waking up and it's a crappy morning, no pun intended, our good friends over at Stanley Steamer phones that are ringing off the hook over here. One thing, Steve, you got quite a few messages there. It's good and bad problems, bad for the people dealing with it, good for you guys. And, you guys are quality experts going out into the field. You have an array of employees. So I know you're able to get those trucks out on the street and help out the community, get their homes cleaned up. And one thing you mentioned, with all the snow melting and everything, let's take yesterday, for example, warmed up enough, a lot of the snow melted off. I've heard of, pipes freezing, basements flooding. Make sure you get out and get those downspouts attached to the home. Get that water dispersed away from the home, away from the sides of the walls. Get down into your basement, make sure the sump pump's running. Right. So,
that's definitely going to be a key issue, especially if you haven't paid attention and heeded my warnings over the last couple months. So when I came on and said, hey, make sure, those outside water spigots are turned off, or the shut-off valves, or another big one that we're still running into is if the house is empty, you're going out of town, turn off the water, things of that nature. But, definitely do your checks and balances to make sure that it doesn't become an issue. Sub pump is going to be a huge one when that snow starts to melt. We've probably had good 10 inches over the last week or so. And I think if I remember correctly, they say that, every inch of snow equates to like a couple inches of rain.
Can't argue.
And so, you're going to start having all that melt, and it's got to go somewhere. So
it does. So make sure, a lot of people are heading south for the winter. Make sure those pipes are turned off before you take off. Make sure you're doing your due diligence before you just pack up and head out of town. There was a gentleman in one of our networking groups. Gentleman left for 1 month, right?
Yep.
Came home, just water everywhere, flooded. I've seen pictures, and the mold that took over in just a short amount of time was unbelievable, and it really caused a headache for him coming back from his travels. So if you come home to a nice clean home, no water damage, make sure you're turning off your pipes. It is weird, you say if people haven't heeded your warnings throughout the past few months, it is. You are setting the table, and these things are happening, and the weather is no reprieve in sight. There's snow all over the place.
Yeah, it's going to happen. The big thing is, we run into, it's not just turning off the water. You got to make sure the water's out of those pipes as well, because if you go downstairs, you turn off your water main and you walk away, well, there's still that stagnant water that's in those pipes, and if those pipes freeze, say your furnace goes out, it's naturally it's going to happen at some point or another. Furnaces are going to give out. And it doesn't take long for the temperatures to dip in the house, especially with the cold nights that we've been having. It doesn't take much for those pipes to burst once they start freezing.
Well, and you're talking about a small amount of water that needs to freeze. It's not a lake that needs to freeze over. So that process becomes much more rapid, correct?
Exactly.
So hey, go to your website, correct?
Yeah.
What's that website?
You can always go to thesteamer.com. The easiest way to get a hold of us would probably, give us a phone call at 309-692-1990. We have a Facebook page as well that you can jump onto and hit us up on that. So, there's various different ways.
Right now, you brought in some 10% off cleaning services by mentioning this ad. So I'm going to it looks like I have about 40 of these up to Anytime Fitness Peoria. If you're looking to get your carpets clean or have them come in and detail the grout, whatever the case may be, stop on by Anytime Fitness Peoria, pick up your gift certificate, give steamer.com or give them a call down at the office, 692-1990. Get your appointment on the book today. All right, we talked a little bit about the USA Olympics. Let's talk a little bit about the NBA trades that are going on. let's try to bring everyone up to speed. We got about 14 minutes, so I'll just run through some notable trades, and then we'll talk about how I think Magic Johnson came into the Lakers a couple years ago with this plan in place, and he is executing it flawlessly. Lonzo Ball, I see the future of basketball heading out to the West Coast, where maybe it is right now with Golden State. Golden State, Draymond Green, we're going to touch on him and his antics on the court. But NBA trades, let's get started. Bulls get Noah Vonleh, and they give up Milikin Rakovic. I have no clue who these guys are.
Nope.
Haven't watched a single Bulls game all season. I think
I'm from Colorado, so I'm a Nuggets fan. So.
Oh, you are? Well, yeah, we're kind of in the same boat then. You know, the Bulls' dismal season, you can get tickets to the game for about $35. If you haven't been up to the United Center, now's the time to take your kid up there and have a great experience. Derrick Rose, he went from Utah over to Minnesota. I do like how Minnesota is silently building a team. Now, Derrick Rose, I don't think will be in the league much longer with all of his past issues and surgeries. I think his body's been beat up. But I think he will help them for the next year or two. You got Isaiah Thomas out to L.A.
Yeah.
Utah sends Joe Johnson over to Sacramento. Utah gets Jay Crowder and Derrick Rose. So Utah out there on the West.
They're setting themselves up real well to be a contender as well.
Yeah, and I think it's time, too, for Utah. I mean, have they really been relevant since the Malone-Stockton era? Probably not so much.
I don't know. I would say early 2000s, during the
2004, I think they made playoffs.
They were a decent team, but that was during the Lakers hiatus, where the Lakers were unstoppable at that point. So
here's a move. So let's come back to that one. Dwayne Wade, he's out of Cleveland, back to Miami. I think Miami's excited to have him. I think Dwayne Wade left on good terms.
He's glad to be back probably as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's 80 degrees in Miami today. Why would he want to be in Cleveland?
Yep.
What do you think? You think Wade will ever join forces with LeBron again?
I don't know.
He's pretty hush about it.
I would definitely say the way that Cleveland's going right now, and they went through an 8-game losing streak there for a little bit, and just won their first game a couple nights ago. It just seems like that whole team is just disgruntled right now. And the big talk has been that, LeBron's going to go to the Lakers. LeBron's going to go to the Lakers. But it'll be really interesting to see if he is going to make that transition out there, and he's going to want to start playing with a lot of younger generation and having to coach that up and build that team for when he leaves, or let's
come back to LeBron. We got a trade that's going to affect Cleveland out there. And then Channing Frye. He's out to the Lakers from Cleveland. So Cleveland dumped quite a few players on the team. I was surprised to see Thomas go as quick as he did. Last year, 5-6 months ago, he was a Celtic to a Cav to a Laker. The writing is, so let's get back to LeBron now. The last trade, George Hill, is from Sacramento to Cleveland.
Yep.
George Hill was with the Pacers for quite a while. Great ball player. He's got the outside shot. He's got the interior moves as well. I think he's a well-rounded player. I think Cleveland is eating their cake and enjoying it too right now. I think they got the best out of all of these trades. They did ship some people out to the West Coast. I thought they got some solid trades in return. They have a young guy that they brought into Cleveland on a trade. I forget the young guy's name. LeBron's extremely impressed with him. Combine that with Paul George and LeBron and a couple of the other role players. I mean, let's not forget, they still have Love. They still got Kyle Korver, right? I mean, they will still have a presence. They're not giving up. I think some people are viewing this as Cleveland just giving up. I think Cleveland will still make the playoffs. I don't know how far of a run they'll make.
Right. Well, and don't forget, LeBron sets himself up in his contracts to basically he gets to make the decisions every year of what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And at the end of this year, it's going to be, in the end, it's going to be his choice. And I think it's pretty widely known that LeBron and the management of that team really don't get along very well.
Yeah, he really despises the owner.
I don't know if they're making all these trades trying to make him happy and mold the team around him again a little bit more in hopes that he'll stay, or if they're trying to look into the future if he does leave of what they can do and what they can get out of it.
Yeah, maybe if LeBron leaves, they still have Paul George and hopefully build the team around him. Would they make it deep into the playoffs? Probably not, but will they fill the seats? I'm sure they will.
Right.
Lakers did say they are going to pursue 2 high-end stars by the end of this year. I honestly think you'll see LeBron retire as a Laker. It makes good sense for LeBron. I mean, Cleveland, it's snowing, it's terrible outside. There's little market to sell to over there when it comes to, big endorsements from Nike and those shoe companies. To where, you get him out in L.A. I thought he'd be a Knick, but with Porzingis going down with torn ACL, I don't know. I think the Lakers.
I think that they probably have the best shot. That market out there, and like you said, the weather. How are you going to beat L.A. and I don't know. Well, he already went to Miami, and that's a good network, and that's good weather. He obviously left.
I think ticket prices, too, will skyrocket, and I think L.A. can afford that.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens.
A really big fan base. So
yeah. Now listen to this. Lakers have Ball. They have Ingram, Lopez, and Luol Deng. I'm a Duke fan. I understand everybody. Duke lost last night. They're overrated. We'll touch on that. I couldn't agree more that they're overrated. But I do think Lakers have somewhat of a decent team right now. You start pairing some of these other players in there, I think Isaiah Thomas will be direct eyes and ears for LeBron. Right. I do think LeBron will sit back, see how it plays out in L.A. I think if things don't happen as according to what maybe has been told to LeBron, LeBron will pull any deal off the table of going out there and maybe look at staying at Cleveland. I think LeBron has got it set up perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
I think LeBron's happy. I think the Cavs are happy. And for the NBA, everybody's talking about the NBA trade finally. I can't remember the last year that the NBA trade was so relevant in the middle of a season as this year. There's a lot of big moves happening, and I don't think, the trade line's over, but I think come end of the season,
it's going
to get really ugly out there in Cleveland. I can't wait to watch LeBron shed a few tears.
I'm just interested to see what those contracts look like in the offseason this year.
Ooh,
so last year they were ridiculous and crazy, and they were going all over the place. We'll see what they are this year.
Glad I don't have that payroll expense. Got Steve Minear with Stanley Steamer in-house here on Daily Energy. We were talking a little bit. How's your phone looking over there?
Busy as usual.
Phone's blowing up. He's got about 38 messages over there. Pipes are freezing. This winter weather's sticking around. We got more snow coming in, so get those downspouts on the house. Figure out a way to get the water away from the home so it's not pooling in.
Yep.
Make sure if you're leaving town that those pipes, the water is turned off.
Yep. And not just turned off, but you let the, flush the toilet a couple times, turn on the sink, anything you can to aerate those pipes to make sure there's nothing in that system. Like I said, you never know if your furnace is going to go out, the heat goes out, pipes start bursting. It's definitely a lot easier and a lot more affordable to take the precautionary measures before you leave town than to have to come home and live in a hotel for a little while.
This is the time I apologize for making fun of my father. Every year we'd take a trip. He would spend 10 minutes turning the water and flushing the lines off. And we always thought Dad was crazy, and we would make fun of him until one year my wife and I went somewhere on a trip, came home a week later, and our guest bathroom was flooded.
Yep.
Flooded into the basement. We had to tear out all the marble flooring and the heating elements in the floor, and then the basement was a mess. And ever since then, I kind of started listening a little bit more to my father. And I try to tame the making fun of, but yeah. So a couple other tips coming into the winter months. What can some people do to ensure that their house stays nice and dry for the next few months while Mother Nature gets out of here coming into spring?
So, ensuring that your house stays dry is a little bit more difficult. There's things that are going to happen, the acts of God, if you will. Pipes break, it happens. Toilets overflow, it happens. Make sure that, if you're doing laundry and you have a sink next to your washer and dryer, that you don't leave the clothes in there with the water turned on is a good one.
Feel like that was a punch at me there. Continue on there, Steve.
So there is things that happen. The biggest piece of advice that I can give you is if something does happen, get a hold of somebody right away to get that drying process started, because the faster that you get it dried out, the less damage that there will be. Everybody's afraid of mold. There's, the black mold going around and all this other stuff, but the big piece of advice on that is building materials, if they're wet for more than 72 hours, that's when you start increasing the risks and possibilities of mold and mildew growth. So if you can get us in there, or anybody in there for that matter, and get it dried up as quickly as possible, you eliminate that risk of having mold growth within your house.
So I hear some people say, I don't care if my basement flooded. It's fine. It's the basement. I could not disagree anymore. Where is your heating and cooling? It's all located in the basement, right?
Yep.
Isn't that just sucking in all of that? And
typically with
a
furnace, you're going to have a cold air intake right next to it. Your furnace is in the basement, so we run into it all the time where people have had a basement flood, and they've tried to do it with themselves, shot back it, and then they threw in a couple fans. They didn't have a dehumidifier to pull the moisture out of the air. And a couple months after, down the road, they start complaining because their basement smells funny and there's black spots all over the walls.
Maybe they're sneezing, coughing a little bit more,
respiratory
wheezing
issues.
Yep.
A whole different slew of stuff that can come along with mold and mildew growth. But then, we'll have somebody come in and test the affected environment if it needs to be. If it's blatantly obvious, typically we don't need to have it tested until we're done. But even if we have it tested, sometimes those, mold counts and the spore counts will be higher even in the other areas that weren't originally affected by the water damage, just because now
it's a process. It will spread.
You start having airflow disturbing those mold colonies and those mold spores, and they start getting airborne, and it can spread to other areas of the house.
I have asthma. If you have a child out there with any type of respiratory issues, I can walk into a building, and if it has mold, I start wheezing immediately. It's it's nothing I can control. So make sure, especially if you have young ones with RSV, other respiratory infections, asthma, things of that nature, make sure you can actually have air samples just taken, correct? Just to confirm that there's no mold.
Yeah.
Or if there is a hint, then you guys can go in and locate that, correct?
Yeah, so if you think that there's a good possibility of there being mold in your house, but it's not blatantly obvious and you can't find it, we always work through Maurer Environmental with our good friend Scott Maurer.
Good dude.
You can give us a call. I'll give you his number. He can come out and do some investigation for you and take air samples, send those off to the lab. Usually about 48 to 72 hours later, he'll have the results back, and he can say, yeah, there's some elevated risks, or no, there's nothing there, and it's not a big deal.
Scott's a great dude. Neighbor had an issue the night prior to Thanksgiving. I called Scott. He came over, helped my neighbor. So Scott Maurer Mold, highly recommended. Hey, we had Steve Miner from Stanley Steamer on the show. Steve's phone's still blowing up. The table's vibrating in here from everyone hitting him up. There's sewage backups and pipes freezing. Mother Nature is not going away anytime soon, everybody. We got more snow coming into the area. Make sure you're doing your due diligence. Get those gutters, the downspouts, get that water away from the house. If you're leaving your home, make sure you take the time to turn off the main water, turn on the faucets, flush those lines. Take care of your home, everybody. If you feel like you're sneezing, having a hard time breathing, it's not much to have a mold sample.
No.
Come out, get the air quality. Make sure the air quality within your home that your loved one's breathing is of good nature.
Right.
We covered a little bit about the Olympics, the Super Bowl. We didn't even talk about 250,000 people attending the Waste Management out in Arizona last week. Kuchar almost had a hole-in-one on 16, came within inches.
That golf course is really nice in Arizona, too. So
just out there about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Unbelievable how they conduct that tournament. Almost 1 million people through their gates last week. Hey, my name's Doug Pinter on Daily Energy with our guest, Steve Miner, in-house. Everybody, get your hats and gloves on. Get them shovels ready. Mother Nature's moving in for the weekend. Have a great day, everybody.
PeoriaLife.com